The third part of setting up your account is security. So you've set up your account, you've figured out which client tools you're going to use, configured them, and now you're going to start to understand security. It's a pretty deep topic, to be honest with you, and I'm really just scratching the surface here. And I really would encourage that you read this entire page. It's not too long, like why do it, what is it, key considerations, how to do it, and most importantly, these white papers in the bottom. So generally, the idea is to use what are called roles. And roles are simply containers for permissions. So here's an example. Google has a lot of pre-created roles that are easy to use. So here's one for the BigQuery service. It's called a BigQuery user. And you can see that this Google created role has these pre-assigned permissions. When you first start, you want to use these Google created roles as much as possible because getting these permissions right can really take a lot of time. However, I understand that some of the research that you're going to be involved in is has compliance regulations around HIPAA if you're in the United States, or maybe GDPR if you're in Europe. So you might need to get more granular into roles. Notice the section here of the console. It's called IAM and Admin. IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. And the general concept is that there are objects or service instances to which you assign permissions. And those can be roles, they can be users, they can be groups. And then there are some more granular types of objects, such as shown here. Service accounts is one. This is one that you assign to services. So let's just take a starter look at this in the console by looking at roles. So if we go over to the console and we type roles, we can see that we have roles set up here under this shield. And this is going to take us to that section, and you can see that we have, this means it's Google created, a number of roles that are available for us, and really it's Google best practice to use these types of roles. Now if we wanted to set up security for a service, we could just type in that service. Notice here's the filters: type, title, used in, status, permissions, and name. So if we wanted to say storage, because that would be a common one for the research use case, because you're going to be putting a lot of course, important files into storage buckets. So you can see that you have compute storage admin, you have a number of different roles around this. So if we click on compute storage admin, we can then see compute storage admin. It can be used with Compute Engine. It is enabled or made available now. Now, if you are going to create your own roles with customized permissions, again, it's best practice to start basically with one of these as a blueprint. So, and you can see you can create a role here. So you click Create Role. And then you can assign for your custom role certain types of permissions. See? And then notice here you can set to a stage for review. This is really an enterprise capability. The idea is that somebody can review and check your permissions if you're doing this manually for compliance, for example. So you can go from alpha to beta to generally available. So if you were going to assign permissions, you'd add permissions, and then notice you can filter the permissions by role. So if we said storage here, you can see that there are 16 different roles that we could pick from. So like I said, this can get pretty complicated pretty fast. So you can see there's two kind of types as well. There's this thing legacy, and this is because when the Google Cloud Platform was originally made available, the way you could control wasn't as granular as some people were needing. So it was at the level of the whole service, like all of storage, rather than an individual object, such as a storage bucket. And so this has been an evolution for the platform. And so that's why you have some of these legacy. I would tend not to use legacy, obviously, for anything new. So what does this actually look like? So let's go to service, something that I'm sure you all use for your files, which is the cloud storage. So in cloud storage, you have this idea of buckets, and buckets have permissions associated to them. So here's some data that I use for a demo for one of my clients. And in this case, I've made this data public because it's used for presentations. Now, you'll notice that some of the other buckets here are set up per object. So if I click over here and I click Edit button, rephrase. If I click over here and I click Edit Bucket Permissions, I then get permissions that I could set either at the level of the object or the level of the bucket. And again, this is kind of showing the maturity of the Google Cloud. Like I said, originally it wasn't this granular, but as more people, researchers, started having specific needs around securing individual files, you could now set object level permissions. And basically, if you want to change permissions on this entire bucket rather than an individual object in it, you add members. And here might be some members that are associated. And then once you select a member, that will be invalid because it doesn't have an email address, then you're going to select a role. And you can go down here to storage, and you can see here's the newer roles: storage admin, object creator, object viewer. And again, you want to start with these roles. So you're going to assign the roles to your data, so files or data in a database, and then you're going to have additional types of permissions that you're going to put on your query and compute services like your virtual machines.